I was in court when the judge gave my mom 2 years for attacking my grandma. I still remember that courtroom like it was yesterday, the smell of disinfectant, the echo of heels clicking sharply on tile, and the cold voice of the judge as she said the words that changed everything. 2 years. My mom got 2 years in prison for attacking my grandma. I didn't even breathe when I heard it. I just stared at her, the only person I'd ever trusted, as the guards walked her away in handcuffs. She turned her head once, but didn't look at me. Maybe she couldn't. Or maybe she knew looking back would break us both. After what felt like forever in silence, we were finally in Dad's car. He kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other squeezing my shoulder every few minutes, like he was trying to remind me he was still there. It's just temporary, he said quietly, until I can figure things out. But the word times, temporary times, felt hollow. Like every time adults said it, it really meant asterisk. Get used to this, asterisk. The car ride lasted hours. The silence between us was so thick it felt like a physical thing, pressing down on my chest. I watched the trees blur by and tried to imagine what figuring things out really meant. I wanted to ask where we were going, but something about Dad's face told me not to. When we pulled up to my grandparents' house, Grandma was already waiting on the porch. She had her old camera hanging around her neck, just like always. I used to think she simply liked taking pictures. I didn't realize back then that she liked times collecting evidence. Asterisk. Dad hugged me at the door. Be good for Grandma and Grandpa, he said, his voice cracking right in the middle. He promised he'd visit every day. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe everything would just go back to normal. But when Grandpa stepped forward and put a hand on Grandma's shoulder, something passed between them, a look I couldn't quite read. And just like that, Dad left. He didn't even look back. Grandma led me around the side of the house to what she called the guest house. It used to be a garage, but they'd converted it into a small apartment. Fresh paint covered the walls, the bed was neatly made, and the air smelled so clean it felt almost fake. This will be your space, she said, smiling, with that same look grandparents have when they want you to trust them. We want you to feel safe here. It was almost convincing until I noticed the windows. They all had child locks, those little plastic things that only open a couple of inches. When did you? I started to ask, but Grandpa cut me off. Oh, we've been preparing, he said quietly from the doorway, voice calm, almost too calm. Since your mother's first arrest, we knew this day would come. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some backup plan. There'd been times, waiting times for this moment. I dropped my backpack on the bed and tried to force a smile, pretending this was fine. But the whole place felt strange, like a hotel room with someone else's name on the door. Every surface was too clean, too perfect, too quiet. Grandma kept glancing at me like I might suddenly lose it. Dinner's at 6, she said softly. We'll call you in. But that night, staring at the ceiling, everything felt wrong. The air smelled like fresh paint mixed with something metallic, the kind of smell that makes your skin crawl. Through the thin wall, I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. But then I heard the words that made my blood turn ice cold. Grandma's voice, sharp and steady. We need to fabricate fresh bruises on our bodies. Make it seem like the child is abusing us. And Grandpa's calm reply, tomorrow night, after she's had time to settle in. I remember gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. I tried to send a text to Dad, but there was no signal. The Wi-Fi was password protected, and even the landline in the corner just buzzed with dead air when I picked it up. That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't a temporary stay. I wasn't being looked after. I was being time set up. Asterisk. The next morning I woke up feeling restless, the weight of that overheard conversation heavy in my mind. I tried to push it aside, but every small noise made me jump the ticking clock, the creak of the house settling. Even my own breathing felt too loud. I got up and looked around the guest house again, this time paying closer attention. The windows still had those child locks. I tried opening them, but they wouldn't budge more than an inch or two, no matter how hard I pulled. The door was even worse. It only opened from the outside. From my side, there was no handle, No latch, just a deadbolt with a keyhole. I tested it carefully, locked tight. I felt dropped. Grandma came in carrying a tray with breakfast eggs, toast, and a glass of orange juice. Her camera hung around her neck like it always did, but now it felt like a weapon pointed right at me. Good morning, sweetheart, she said, trying to sound warm. She placed the tray down on the small table and snapped a quick photo. Click. You look tired. Did you sleep poorly? I nodded silently, too nervous to answer. She studied my face like she was measuring something, every word feeling like a test I couldn't pass. My mother had trouble sleeping too, before her episodes, Grandma added, her voice low and serious. My mom's not crazy, I said quietly. Grandma's expression hardened. Your mother attacked 3 people. The judge saw the evidence. She set the tray down a little too hard. Violence runs in families. We'll be watching for signs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to protest. But I had no phone to call for help, no signal, no Wi-Fi, no way out. When I thought they had left to run errands, I searched the entire guest house for a phone. No luck. The windows wouldn't open. The door stayed locked tight. I was trapped. Then Grandpa appeared in the doorway. Looking for something? He said, his calm voice sending chills down my spine. I want to call my dad. He's at work, Grandpa said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. The social worker comes tomorrow. She needs proof you're dangerous, just like your mother. What? I backed away, heart pounding, but he stepped closer. You'll give us the proof. Some scratches on your arms. Maybe a black eye. He smiled. You just have to look like you did it. I felt backed into a corner, literally. And then I saw Grandma through the window, camera ready. Click. Grandpa said, See? You're already threatening me. I had no choice. I had to defend myself. I grabbed a lamp and smashed the window. Glass exploded everywhere as the alarm screamed through the house. She's destroying property, Grandma shouted, taking pictures like she was capturing the scene for evidence. Just like her mother. I kicked out the broken glass and squeezed through. My ankle twisted badly when I hit the ground, but I didn't stop. I ran across their lawn towards the neighbor's house. Shouts followed me. Grandpa's voice was calm but unnervingly certain. The neighbors already know about your violent mother, he called out. Who do you think they'll believe? I climbed the fence into the Hendersons' yard and pounded on their door with bloody hands. Mrs. Henderson opened the door with wide eyes. Oh my gosh, what happened? I struggled to speak through gasps. My grandparents, they're trying to frame me. Just then, Grandma appeared at the fence. There she is. We're sorry, Janet. She had an episode, broke the window. Mrs. Henderson looked at me differently, that careful, cautious look someone gives to something dangerous. They're lying, I told her. They want to hurt themselves and blame me. Sweetheart, let's get you back to your grandparents, Mrs. Henderson said softly, starting to guide me toward the fence. No, I protested, but she was already pulling me back. Grandpa lifted me over the fence like I weighed nothing. Thank you, Janet, he said to Mrs. Henderson. We'll get her help. Back in the guest house, Grandma took photo after photo of every bruise and cut. Click, click, click. Look what you've done to yourself, she said with a fake sadness. The social worker will be very interested in your meltdown. My world spun. That's why your father wanted us to do this, Grandma said quietly. He needs evidence for the divorce. Proof your mother's violence passed to you. I understood everything then. The blank look on Dad's face in court, why he left so fast. He was in on it. He wanted her locked up forever. And me? Grandpa said, you in psychiatric care, much cleaner than a messy custody battle. The front door opened, and Dad's voice came through. How was she? We need to talk. Grandma called back. There's been an incident. Dad appeared in the doorway and saw the blood. His face went carefully blank. Did she hurt anyone? Only herself, so far. Dad nodded, still not looking at me. The social worker comes tomorrow. Everything will be documented, Grandma promised. They left me in the guest house with new locks on everything. The next day, the social worker would arrive, and they thought they were ready. But they didn't know I was listening. I had no choice. I ran for the door, desperate to get out, but it was locked again. Grandma entered, camera ready, snapping pictures like I was a wild animal caught in the act. Get some photos of her looking angry, Grandpa instructed. Before we rough ourselves up, I grabbed a lamp and smashed the window. The alarm screamed through the house like a siren calling trouble. She's destroying property, Grandma shouted, taking photos with quick clicks. Just like her mother. I kicked out the remainder of the glass and squeezed through the jagged frame. I hit the ground hard, and my ankle twisted painfully, but I kept moving, running across the lawn towards the neighbor's house. There was nowhere else to go. Grandpa's calm footsteps followed behind me. His voice cut through the air like cold steel. The neighbors already know about your violent mother, he said. Who do you think they'll believe? I grabbed the top of the fence, pulled myself up, and dropped into the neighbor's yard. My hands were bloody, and the pain in my ankle was sharp, but I pounded on their door with everything I had. Mrs. Henderson opened it, eyes wide with surprise and concern. Oh my gosh, what happened? She asked, her voice filled with shock. My grandparents are trying to frame me. I gasped between breaths. They want to make it look like I'm dangerous. Then Grandma appeared at the fence, tears running down her cheeks. There she is, she said in a voice dripping with false sorrow. We're so sorry, Janet. She had an episode, broke our window. Mrs. Henderson looked at me with that careful, wary gaze people reserve for someone they think might be trouble. They're lying, I insisted. They want to hurt themselves to blame me. Sweetheart, let's get you back to your grandparents, Mrs. Henderson said softly, reaching out to guide me away. No, I protested, but she was already pulling me back toward the fence. Grandpa lifted me over like I weighed nothing. Thank you, Janet, he said to the neighbor. We'll get her the help she needs. Back in the guest house, Grandma photographed every cut, every bruise. Click, click, click. Look what you've done to yourself, she said with a rehearsed sadness. The social worker will be very interested in your meltdown. My world spun as the truth hit me like a punch. That's why your father asked us to do this, Grandma said quietly. He needs evidence for the divorce, proof that your mother's violence is passing to you. It all made sense now, Dad's cold look in court. How quickly he left me with them. He was in on it. He wanted her locked away forever. And me? Grandpa said, you in psychiatric care. Much cleaner than a messy custody battle. Just then the front door opened and Dad's voice came through the room. How was she? We need to talk. Grandma answered, there's been an incident. Dad appeared in the doorway and saw the blood. His face went blank, carefully blank. Did she hurt anyone? He asked. Only herself so far. Dad nodded, still not looking at me. The social worker comes tomorrow. Everything will be documented, Grandma said. They left me locked inside with new locks on all the windows and doors. The next day, the social worker would arrive. They thought they were ready, but I had other plans. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak and whisper kept me frozen, waiting for the next move. I clutched my phone, voice recorder open. Even though there was no signal to send anything, I just had to keep recording, keep a record of everything that happened. Morning came with Grandma turning the key in the door and stepping in with a breakfast tray and her camera hanging like a weapon around her neck. She set the food down and studied my face with clinical interest, noting the dark circles under my eyes. I stayed silent, not touching the food until she left, checking everything carefully for anything that might make me sick. Grandpa came in with lunch, making small talk about the weather like we were some ordinary family. I answered in short sentences, watching his hands, remembering how he grabbed my ankle just days before. When he asked if I slept well, I said yes, lying through my teeth. I was learning that giving them nothing was its own kind of power. His smile stayed fixed, but his eyes remained cold and measuring. Then, around 2:00 the afternoon, I heard a car pull up and voices at the front door. My heart pounded. The social worker was here, right on schedule. Through the wall, Grandma's voice floated over warm, concerned, practiced. She explained how worried they were after my violent outburst the day before. I pressed my ear against the wall. listening as Grandma described the window-breaking incident, her voice trembling with fake emotion. She relayed my mother's violent charges and hinted at hereditary violence, painting me as a ticking time bomb before the social worker even met me. I heard the social worker's softer, more professional voice respond. Then the guest house door opened. Grandma entered with a woman in her 30s, wearing a professional but kind look, carrying a tablet. Landra Gibbs introduced herself carefully, asking how I was doing with genuine concern in her eyes. Grandma stayed in the doorway with her camera, clearly ready to document everything. I took a breath and asked if I could speak privately. Grandma immediately objected, saying she had to stay for everyone's safety because of my episode. The social worker glanced at the child locks and deadbolt, her face tightening slightly. Then, firmly, she told Grandma that private interviews were protocol and necessary. Grandma's face tightened, but she backed out, pulling the door closed behind her. Once alone, I sat on the edge of my bed while Landra took the chair, open and patient. She asked me to tell my side what happened yesterday. I started with the window breaking, but she gently stopped me. Go back further, she said. Start from when you first arrived. I told her about the overheard plan, the locked phone, the child-proof windows and doors, how Grandpa cornered me. My voice shook, but I kept going. Landa typed fast, sometimes silent, her expression shifting from neutral to worried. I pulled my phone out and showed her the voice recordings I'd made, timestamps and all. She asked if she could listen. I nodded and played the one where they planned to fake bruises. Her jaw tightened. She photographed my phone screen again, then asked if there were more. I showed her 3 other recordings, including the one where Grandpa said I needed to look dangerous for the social worker. Landra's typing grew frantic. She stood and asked to see the broken window, already covered with plywood. She tried opening it only 2 inches due to the child locks. She photographed the locks in detail, moving to every window and door, even the tiny bathroom attached to the guest house. Her questions got sharper: meal times, when I could leave phones in the house. I answered, honestly, making sure to stay calm. She looked at me with real concern now and promised to return for a surprise follow-up soon. She recommended a full safety evaluation of this placement. Then she asked if I felt in immediate danger. I thought of screaming yes, begging her to get me out. But I knew what immediate danger meant: emergency removal, maybe somewhere even worse than here. So I took a breath and said I was scared but could wait if she came back soon. She squeezed my hand and told me if anything happened, call 911. I nodded, unsure if the police would believe me when my grandparents had all those photos of me looking violent. Then Grandma returned with the key in the lock. The door clicked shut. That night, sleep was impossible. The darkness pressed in around me like a heavy weight, thick and suffocating. Every small noise made me freeze: the creaks of the house settling, footsteps on the floor, muffled voices drifting through the thin walls. I lay awake, heart pounding, clutching my phone with the voice recorder open even though there was no signal. I knew I was completely alone and trapped, somewhere no one could hear me. I counted my breaths to stay calm, just like Mom taught me before all this fell apart. Every few minutes, I would check the door handle, making sure it was still locked from the outside. I wasn't ready for whoever was in charge here to come back and start their cruel game again. The hours crawled by so slowly I thought morning would never come. Then, somewhere around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the main house. My whole body tensed, ready to run or scream, but the footsteps passed by without stopping at the guest house. I went back to counting breaths, trying not to let panic swallow me whole. Morning arrived with the sound of Grandma's key turning in the external lock. She entered with the breakfast tray and the familiar camera hanging around her neck, a weapon disguised as a comfort. She set down the food and studied my face like a scientist examining a specimen. Those dark circles under my eyes didn't go unnoticed. I didn't touch the food until Grandma left, carefully checking everything before taking a single bite. The eggs looked normal, the toast was just toast, but I sniffed everything anyway, trusting no one. My stomach was tied in knots too tight to eat much, but I forced down half the plate because I knew I needed my strength. Later, I used the bathroom mirror and my phone camera to document my appearance. I took pictures of my unbruised face and arms, complete with timestamps to prove what I really looked like before they tried to change the story. I angled the camera carefully, capturing every angle of my face, neck, and arms. My hands shook, but the pictures came out clear. I hid my phone in the pillowcase's small tier, creating a perfect hiding spot where I could reach it quickly if I needed to record audio. Grandpa came in with lunch, speaking softly about the weather, trying to sound like a normal grandparent. I kept my answers short and watched his hands, remembering how cold and hard they were when he grabbed my ankle. When he asked if I slept well, I lied and said yes. I was learning something important, that giving them nothing was its own kind of power. Though he smiled, his eyes stayed cold and calculating. Around 2 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway and voices came to the front door. My heart raced. The social worker was here, just like she said she would be. Through the wall, I heard Grandma's practiced voice, warm and concerned. She explained how worried they were about my violent outburst yesterday. I pressed my ear closer, catching every word as Grandma described the window-breaking incident, her voice trembling with fake emotion. She told the social worker about Mom's violent charges and hinted at inherited violence, painting me as a bomb ready to explode even before the social worker met me. The social worker's voice was quieter, professional, but you could hear her concern. The guest house door opened, and Grandma stepped in, followed by a woman in her 30s with a kind yet professional expression, holding a tablet. Landra Gibbs introduced herself with gentle confidence, asking how I was doing, real concern shining in her eyes. Grandma stayed in the doorway, camera ready, like she was part referee, part watchdog, making sure everything got recorded. I took a deep breath and asked Landra if we could speak privately. Grandma immediately objected, saying she needed to stay for everyone's safety because of my episode. Landra glanced toward the child-locked windows and the deadbolt, her expression tightening slightly. Then she firmly told Grandma that private interviews were required protocol, no exceptions. Grandma's face went tight, but she backed out, pulling the door closed behind her with visible reluctance. Once alone, I sat on the edge of the bed while Landra settled into the desk chair. Her body language was open and patient, reminding me this wasn't just about judgment. She urged me to tell what happened in my own words, starting with yesterday's window breaking. But when I began, she gently stopped me. Go back further, she said. Start at when you first arrived. I told her about overhearing their plan through the wall, how they wanted to fake bruises, about the locked phone, the child-proof windows, the locked door. I described how Grandpa cornered me, my voice shaking but steady. Landra kept typing, sometimes silent, absorbing every word, her face shifting from neutral to concerned. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and showed her recordings with timestamps. She asked if she could listen. I nodded and played the recording where Grandma and Grandpa discussed fabricating bruises to frame me. Her jaw tightened as Grandma's voice played through the speaker. When it ended, she photographed the phone screen and asked if there were more. I showed her 3 other recordings, including one where Grandpa said I had to look dangerous for the social worker. Landra's typing grew faster and more intense. She stood and asked to see the broken window, already covered from the outside with plywood. She tried opening it, but only 2 inches of movement were possible due to the child locks. She photographed the locks and investigated every window and door in the guest house, including the tiny bathroom Grandpa had installed. Her questions got more specific, asking about mealtimes, whether I could leave, and what phones were in the house. I answered honestly and carefully, keeping my voice calm. She looked at me with real concern, her early professionalism replaced with something softer. She promised to return unannounced soon, recommending a full safety evaluation of my placement. Finally, she asked if I felt in immediate danger. I wanted to scream times, yes times, and beg her to take me away right then. But I knew what immediate danger meant: emergency removal, and they could send me anywhere, even somewhere worse than here. So I took a deep breath and told her I was scared but could manage if she came back soon. She squeezed my hand unexpectedly, a small comfort, and told me to call 911 if I ever felt unsafe before she returned. I nodded, doubtful anyone would believe me when my grandparents had all those photos that made me look violent. Then the door clicked. Grandma was back, key turning in the lock, camera around her neck, waiting, watching, ready. After Landra left, I pressed my ear against the thin wall between the guest house and the kitchen. Grandma's voice came through first, high and anxious, asking Grandpa what I might have said during the interview. His response was quieter, harder to hear, but I caught something about damage control. Then his voice shifted, cold and hard, unlike anything I'd heard before. We need to accelerate the timeline, he said clearly. My stomach dropped. I fumbled for my phone and started recording again, holding it close to the wall so I wouldn't miss a single word. Grandma murmured something I couldn't make out clearly. Grandpa's voice rose slightly, saying they couldn't wait for the next social worker visit. I listened in horror as they discussed the need for visible evidence proof by tomorrow morning. Grandma said the word times evidence times like she was ordering groceries, practical and casual. Grandpa agreed, adding they had to make it convincing but not overdo it. My hands shook as I recorded, barely daring to breathe. They talked for another 10 minutes, laying out the details of their plan, deciding on timing, what bruises or marks might look most believable to investigators. Grandpa wanted to do it that very night. Grandma argued it should wait until just before the social worker's next visit so it would be fresh and indisputable. The way they talked like it was a business meeting or a dinner party made my stomach twist with nausea. These were my grandparents, the people who were supposed to protect me. When they finally went silent, I stopped the recording and checked that the file saved properly. It was there, stamped with the date and time. Then, about an hour later, the door to the guest house opened. Grandma and Grandpa came in together. Their faces were set, cold, and determined. Grandpa locked the door behind them and stood guard like a soldier. He told me flatly that I wouldn't be allowed any more private conversations with social workers or anyone else. My heart pounded as I backed away and kept my hand in my pocket, phone ready to record everything. Grandma stepped closer and said loudly that troubled teens couldn't be trusted to tell the truth about themselves. She was performing, saying it like she wanted to be recorded, though she didn't know I already was. Grandpa said they were responsible for my safety and would supervise all my interactions from now on. I said nothing, kept my face blank, and let my phone record every word. Grandma pulled out her camera and took photos of me standing against the wall. I realized she was building her narrative again, making it look like I was aggressive or defiant. They stood watching me a long minute longer. Then Grandpa said dinner would be delivered at 6 p.m. and I was not to make any phone calls. They left, and I heard the lock click from outside. The second they were gone, I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording. My hands were shaking, but the file was clear. I grabbed my notebook and started writing everything down while it was fresh, every detail, every cold word, every look. Then I hid the written timeline inside the lining of my jacket where it'd be hard to find. That night was long, lonely, and full of terror. Every sound made me freeze, listening for footsteps or voices coming back. Around 2 a.m., I heard their voices again through the wall. I started a new recording, holding my phone close. Grandpa's voice was cold, talking about how hard to hit I should be. My blood went ice cold. Grandma told him not to push too far, said it had to look believable. They debated whether a black eye looked more convincing than bruises. Grandpa suggested using makeup to help the marks. They spoke casually, like planning a dinner party. It made me sick to my stomach. I recorded every word, my body frozen in fear. The plan was clear. Tonight was the night they would hurt themselves. They said they had to make it look real, but not so real it couldn't be explained away. Grandpa talked softly about timing, making sure the bruises and black eyes were fresh for the next social worker visit. Grandma agreed, saying they had to be careful not to overdo it or raise suspicion. Their voices were calm, detached, like professionals doing a job, not the people who were supposed to love me. I stayed as still as I could, barely breathing, holding my phone tight to catch every word. I thought about running again, but with the broken ankle and locked door, there was nowhere to go. The guest house felt like a prison, and I was a prisoner trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to survive whatever they were planning. But what scared me most was knowing there was no one else who could help me. At every turn, the people I should trust were the ones setting me up. As the night deepened, the shadows seemed to close in on me. I wondered if anyone would believe me when the social worker came back, or if I'd become just another sad story lost to lies and betrayal. But I refused to give up. I was determined to keep recording, keep documenting, keep fighting. No matter what came next, I would make sure the truth was heard somehow. The hours passed slowly. Sometimes I'd hear voices outside the guest house. I'd hold my breath, afraid to move, afraid they might come in and find the evidence, my recordings, my notes. I kept my phone close, my lifeline and witness. When dawn finally came, I was exhausted but still standing. I could only hope this nightmare was close to ending, even if it meant facing the storm head on. Because sometimes the worst battles have to be fought in silence, and sometimes survival means being brave enough to testify against those who should have been your protectors. This story isn't just about a broken family or unfair accusations. It's about trust shattered, survival against all odds, and the strength it takes to fight back when those who should protect you become your greatest threat. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles happen behind closed doors, and not everything is as it seems on the surface. But even in the darkest times, courage can shine through, and the truth has a way of finding a voice no matter what it takes to tell it. If you ever feel alone or unheard, remember, your story matters, and there is always hope. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more real, raw, and powerful Reddit stories like this one. Have you ever experienced or witnessed something similar? Share your thoughts or stories in the comments below. Your voice could make a difference. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thank you for listening and stay safe out there.